the tying run is at second.
Sometimes you got to get lucky against a guy like Chapman.
Now the 2-2.
High fly ball into right field.
Back at the wall. Tie game.
Near the wall. It's out of here. Looks up. You can. Hit on the boy. Yeah. That's hard to believe.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Baseball Never Sleeps podcast. It is Friday, November 16th, 2018. I'm your co-host, Simon Farber. Along with me, Nick Lanscioni. Nick, good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to have the band back together since the golden days of Glenbrook South High School and WGBK Radio.
Yeah, glad we could get this back together. We kind of came to a mutual decision that, well, there's no baseball on TV anymore. It's dark and cold, and we have to create our own baseball entertainment. So, in the end, we now have a podcast.
We sparked a little fire, and like you said, we do now have the podcast, and yeah, we're going to bring the heat. We're going to bring the heat to all of you.
So just to let you guys know a little bit about us, I'm at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Nick is at Indiana University, and we really just are big baseball nerds and got to keep ourselves entertained. So this will just be a podcast covering the hot stove and rumors and anything that comes in between those two lines. So I wanted to start off first talking about Bryce Harper. He's the hot topic all this winter. Only Bryce Harper can overshadow Manny Machado being a free agent.
Yeah, Bryce Harper, I mean, we've waited. This is the free agency class we have waited for. It is finally here. I remember we talked about it 2 years ago on our radio show back in high school, and it's just so crazy how the day has finally come where we're talking about Bryce Harper and Manny Machado potentially landing on different teams other than their former teams, the LA Dodgers and the Washington Nationals.
So the latest is Ken Rosenthal brought out a story earlier this week that the Houston Astros had a deal in place for Harper from the Nationals back at the trade deadline, but the Nationals management nixed the deal. It didn't go through. According to Rosenthal, it included 2017 first-round pick J.B. Bukauskas, along with another couple of prospects, among them Garrett Stubbs. But deal did not go through, looking like a pretty rough move for the Nationals now with everything considered.
Yeah, now it's going to be tough to land Harper back. Obviously, the price tag it's very hefty, and the Nationals did end up making an offer to Harper before the season came to conclusion, a 10-year, $300 million deal, and obviously he did not accept, so can only imagine what he's really expecting. Could be 350, 400, who knows?
Yeah, do you think that offer sets the market? I mean, it didn't have an opt-out in its contract, so Harper would have been stuck to all 10 years. So, but ignoring that fact, do you think that, sets the floor for a potential deal? Are we looking way over $300 million?
Well, I think the usual response to that question would be yes, but the baseball market, it is just played out very differently in the past couple of years. It's just swayed left and right. It's been completely out of whack and has slowed down a bit. Obviously, with the free agents on the table, I think it'll accelerate a lot more. But teams that we had pegged for Harper and Machado, teams like the Yankees, the Chicago Cubs, the Dodgers, they have some restraints right now with being able to hand out the big contracts. So I wouldn't completely call it a concrete answer that it's the floor, but obviously surpassing $300 million, that'll put you ahead of the pack.
Yeah, you brought up the budget constraints for some of these big market clubs. Baseball, in my opinion, has a big problem on their hands when they have, somewhat of a flexible salary cap, but no salary floor. And it's just leading to teams cutting costs, but they're not forcing any teams to spend enough money. It's kind of a players' union disaster, in my opinion, but probably will be some renovations to that in the upcoming CBA agreements.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that.
It kind of goes along with the qualifying offer, too, with the fact that players are not really accepting the qualifying offer, but nobody wants to sign players with qualifying offers because you have to give up draft picks. And that's what the Nationals are looking at. They're looking at a 4th-round compensation pick if they don't sign Bryce Harper, which is obviously a lot lower than what Houston offered them. So all things considered, Nationals look like if anybody's coming out on the losing end, they would be the team number one that really did not capitalize on Bryce Harper's services. And they never won a playoff series with him in the 6 years he was there.
Yeah, it's really a shame with a talent such as Harper, and you look at the team that surrounds him, guys like Trey Turner, Anthony Rendon, who make up the infield. You have Max Scherzer, Juan Soto, up-and-coming, fantastic rookie, finished second place in Rookie of the Year voting in the National League. Scherzer, Strasburg, an impressive pitching staff, and they were just never able to piece together a big playoff run. Really just a shame. And now Harper's out on the open market. Do you count the Nationals out at this point now that he's available? Are you ruling them out of this Harper race?
Yeah, I do. I think the contract offer on the last day was a total PR move. I don't think they thought they had any chance of landing him. It's just to say that, well, we tried. But, really they didn't. I don't think – I mean, if there's no opt-out and you're offering – a deal that you don't think he's ever going to sign, what's the point of offering it? I mean, Boris, why would a player represented by Scott Boras sign
Scott
before
Boras.
before the offseason even starts? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, good luck trying to play with Scott Boras because he usually turns the tables and just plays teams like they're puppets, really.
I mean, people hate him, or at least fans do, but I'm pretty impressed. Like, I can't hate the guy. He's so good at his job. He got over, $150 million for Eric Hosmer last winter, which is already a disaster in San Diego.
Yeah. That has not shaped out too well so far. Obviously, not going to call it a disappointing contract. I'm not going to label that as a disappointment just yet. I mean, the first season, not the results you want from a guy like Eric Hosmer, but this is a young San Diego team, great prospects coming up. But like you said, yeah,
now they just have a giant lump of money sitting there on a first baseman who had a 720 OPS. I mean,
it's concerning. It's concerning right
money
now. Yeah, Scott Boras is definitely making some money, and it's just funny. When I think of Scott Boras, I always think of that one time where he's just in the background staring at Mike Trout as he's at the plate. Just a really scary sight. It looks pretty intimidating in the background. No expression on his face, staring at one of the best players in the game. Mike Trout, not represented by Scott Boras.
Yeah, I saw that. They made it a meme that he's eyeing Trout. But
we'll see if he lands a big fish. No pun intended.
I read that Mike Trout, a lot of people think he might be a lock to sign with his hometown team in Philadelphia.
I've been seeing that too.
But the thing is, a lot of reporters are saying that the Phillies are almost a lock to sign one of these two generational talents in Machado and Harper. So do they have the money to add a Trout on top of that? I mean, that seems like it would be outrageous, but you never know. These teams are making so much money.
Yeah, and especially with their new TV deal, that definitely helped open up some space. That was a big TV deal that flushed some money into the system. And but like you said, adding a guy like Mike Trout on top of a Machado or Harper, oh boy. I mean, you are just breaking the piggy bank open and dishing out all you've got.
I mean, 2019 Phillies are on the books for an estimated $112 million right now, which is not super high, but at the end of 2018 they were only at $100 million. So they're already up this year before adding a Machado or a Harper. But I think they're ready to go all in. They have a young pitching staff with Nola and Jared Eichhoff, and those guys impressed in 2018. And maybe they are the breakout team in the NL East that nobody seems to want to win.
Well, they were always right there, kind of in the middle of the season, right behind the Braves. It was always between those two teams, really, and the Nationals too, I guess, but they kind of fell out eventually, and then it just came down to those two teams. But they are an exciting team coming up, some pretty good young talent, like you said, Aaron Nola, a fantastic pitcher. I know you said what they have on the books right now for contracts, it's not the best. It's just okay. I know I did see a rumor, though, that they are trying to shop Carlos Santana and try to get some money off the books there.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that because Carlos Santana, he's owed $20 million this year, which is quite a lot, but he was pretty productive and he had a pretty good on-base percentage. I don't know if that's a guy you typically want to shop off for, a minimal return. I think he can be a big player in that lineup around Hoskins, and then you add one of those giant bats in there. The NL East to me is so wide open. I mean, the Mets, nobody knows what the Mets are doing. They have that pitching staff, but they can't construct a winning roster. The Braves were good. They won the division. They played really good baseball, but I wouldn't say I'm intimidated by the Braves just yet.
Mm-hmm. They're not that dominant force yet, like you said. Backpedaling a bit, though, to Carlos Santana, I know he's at first base, and Rhys Hoskins used to play at first base. Now he's in the outfield. I could definitely understand the reasoning. I mean, obviously Harper being a right fielder, you can easily move back Rhys Hoskins to first base. So maybe they're not expecting a fantastic return. Santana, though, was productive in this last season, and he was a pretty good bat that they had in the lineup almost every day. Played 161 games.
I mean, the batting average was bad, but as you know, I don't really care for judging it on batting average. How easy is it to find a 350 OBP bat on the free agent market? It's not what it used to be. I think, I mean, I'm not going to say you don't shop him around. Obviously, the GM has to do their job and look at offers, but I don't know. I think if I'm Philadelphia, I'm holding on to Santana and keeping him as that on-base force.
What would the outfield look like then, though, if they landed Harper? They'd have Rhys Hoskins out there, Odubel. Who gets the...
Yeah, Hoskins, you've got Odubel Herrera, you've got Nick Williams. I don't know.
He could come off the bench. It's not vital to have Nick Williams.
It's a good problem to have.
Right.
If you're talking about where do we fit Bryce.
Yeah, and the Cubs, you look at them a couple years ago, and they had a pretty similar situation with their outfield as well, with John Jay, Kyle Schwarber, Jason Hayward, Ian Happ. Ben Zobrist even played some outfield too. Now, that's not the same situation. You said when you're dealing with Bryce Harper, you could figure that out, but when it's John Jay, we got to fit in John Jay somewhere. It's not the same,
and the
but
season,
it's similar in some way.
During the year, as the year goes on, it kind of sorts itself out. I mean, the Cubs had, Kyle Schwarber get hurt, and then he struggled when he came back, and Almora didn't hit righties this year, so he only faced lefties. It sounds really jumbled, on paper before the year starts, but once you actually get going, it sorts itself out. So the Nationals will definitely find a place to play everybody, especially with their, sabermetric-minded manager and Gabe Kapler. I think it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, it'll fall in place. They just gotta give it time. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Things are going to heat up. It's just, like we've said, it's great to have the offseason back. I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but the offseason, it's a good time.
It's fun.
It is fun.
Now, you brought up the Cubs with their roster and their outfield crunch, and their offseason went just about as bad as it could have possibly gone.
The Cubs? Yikes. Yeah, they're in trouble right now, having to deal with guys like Yu Darvish, Jason Hayward, Brandon Morrow, their injuries. It's painful.
I mean, if you look at the guys they added, Tyler Chatwood, he was a disaster. I mean, he was almost unwatchable. Darvish was, didn't pitch much. He was hurt, and then he was kind of a PR disaster with the A-Rod story and everything around that. And Brandon Moore didn't pitch down the stretch either. I mean, they looked like good additions in December, but when it came season time, it was a mess there. And so, that puts everything in perspective when you look at where a team's going in the offseason, because I mean, everybody was so high on these moves, and it bombed.
It did blow up in their face. I recall with the Brandon Morrow situation, it was sort of linked to Madden, where he was pitching late in a game. I remember it was back in June, I believe, and all of a sudden it triggered an injury. Theo Epstein, I remember in reading an Athletic article by Ken Rosenthal, just talked about the situation going on with Joe Madden and how he's approaching his final season as manager. And Theo said he won't elect to extend the contract. I'm not saying Joe Madden is solely the reason that these guys did not work out, but he factored in a little with the whole Brandon Morrow situation and how he got injured there. But if we go across town and look at our Chicago White Sox, they've been making some noise. They've been making some noise here and there.
Yeah, they have the opposite of an outfield roster crunch right now with some of the guys they've been rolling out there on a daily basis. And Bryce Harper being out there, I was honestly shocked that they were one of the first teams linked to Bryce this winter.
Morosi said it on a early morning, weekday morning, I think. I woke up to the tweet, and I jumped straight out of bed and was very happy. Let's enjoy. I think we just have to enjoy it for the time being, because I'd call it unlikely. But if I do paint you a picture, we look at all of the Harper talk and what's been going on there, and you look at his Instagram, posted a picture of him in a Bulls hat. You look at Michael Kopech's Instagram, he posted saying he'd be willing to give up the number 34. There's a picture that got leaked at the United Center with Harper's name on screens, in a White Sox logo, and his jersey on the Jordan statue in a White Sox jersey. I think we have to ride this wave of excitement for as long as we can.
I'm not saying they're going to land him. But we've been provided with enough entertainment for the last couple of weeks regarding Bryce. Because, coming into the offseason, I knew the White Sox, had that money available, and, I thought they'd, try to get out there and get that generational talent that Rick Hahn's been hinting about for pretty much since the day Chris Sale was dealt. But to be the first team in the media to be officially linked, to Bryce Harper or Manny Machado in the offseason, I mean, we all know the Phillies are in, but this was, very direct and to the point that the White Sox are interested in both of them, and that just stood out to me. That was fun to see.
Yeah, they're going to go down swinging. I don't think this is just, saying something. I think they're at the table. I think they will make an offer. Not saying they're like we've repeated it over and over. Who knows if they end up getting them? Just as long as they make the actual effort with all of this cap space they have.
Yeah, I believe they have somewhere in the realm of like $50 million committed for next year, and only $10 million the year after that. I mean, there's so many possibilities of the way they can go. The only thing is, I'm hesitant. If you put out Bryce Harper as the guy right away on November 4th or whatever it was, and then we end up seeing the White Sox land a couple of lower level free agents, it's almost going to feel like a disappointment.
It could be looked at a disappointment. It'd be hard to not look at it as a disappointment being linked to Bryce Harper, but we have seen rumors that the White Sox are interested and some kind of lower tier guys, Michael Brantley, potentially AJ Pollock. Haven't heard concrete evidence there, but obviously those aren't the same guys as Harper. They're not on the same level, but still solid players. They're going to make a splash in this free agency class. We just don't know how big the wave is going to be.
Yeah, another thing that made that Harper news so interesting is, this tweet from NBC Sports' David Kaplan. He tweeted on November 4th, quote, "After talking with a handful of MLB sources this weekend, I'm starting to believe more than ever the Cubs will not be a factor for Bryce Harper or Manny Machado. The only way that changes is if Theo and Jed and co. are able to move serious money off the books," end quote. Are you buying that? Because I don't know if I'm buying it right away.
Yeah, that tweet definitely surprised me. And just from it coming from Kaplan, a guy who has his sources, he's a big-time Cubs guy, so he's got guys on the inside. I can't buy it right away, but if you really think about it, there's so much money committed to Yu Darvish and Jason Hayward and Morrow. So you can look at it through that lens, but
yeah, there is. But at the same time,
it's the Cubs. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned it, but that TV deal, being such a big
TV
market
contract. I get the feeling that they've had Bryce Harper circled, on their board for the last 4 or 5 years during this, rebuild and into their prime. And to say that, well, they don't have the money restraints. I mean, Theo knew who he was paying for last winter with the knowledge that Harper would be available this winter. I mean, they're not doing anything, short-sighted where they got caught off guard. I mean, this Bryce Harper anticipation has been around since, 2015, 2014? I mean, I feel like we've been hanging on to it forever.
Yeah, it's truly insane how long we've actually had Harper pegged to the Cubs, and just kind of looking forward to this free agency class. I knew it was going to be big, but I knew there could be some anxiety with just Harper being linked to the Cubs for such a while, and for this to come out, it's just I'm going to say I'm not going to buy it. The Cubs are lurking in the weeds right now like a garden snake, and they will bite down and clench down on Harper when the time comes. I hope not, but it's hard to rule the Cubs out. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it at this. When on December 5th, the report comes out that the Cubs are the favorites to land outfielder Bryce Harper, I will be so not shocked. I will not bat an eye whatsoever at the information. It'll be what we always expected. So, for the next few weeks, we can probably hold on to the excitement that maybe the White Sox have a chance and the Cubs are out, but I don't actually think that's reality in the slightest.
Yeah, and I will jump on board with you in that statement. I would definitely not be surprised if the Cubs, led the pack come winter meetings time, and all of a sudden they're right there about to have Harper signed. So yeah, I'm completely on board with you. Although it's going to be difficult because the Phillies are going to put up a fight. The White Sox are at the table. There's a handful of teams at the table, so this could easily heat up. And I definitely think the Cubs are lurking right behind.
Just like every offseason, we'll have to let the rumors guide us where they may lead over the next few weeks. We're going to transition now into our interview with SiriusXM's Craig Mish, who has sources within the Marlins organization. He talks about some good Miami news, including Lewis Brinson, JT Realmuto, even the future of Don Mattingly in Miami. And we'll get to that after this break, so stay with us. The Baseball Never Sleeps crew remembers October 26th, 2018, Ian Kinsler's throwing error to send a wild World Series Game 3 into the 14th inning.
Looking for a hit to tie it. Muncy at second, the 1-1. That's up the middle. It's backhanded. Throw to first is wide. tied. This game is tied.
Rolls to the sidewall, and the Dodgers have tied it at 2.
That allowed the tying run to score. Getting to second base, so big.
We are now happy to welcome Sirius XM's Craig Mish onto the Baseball Never Sleeps podcast. Craig, thank you for joining. We see you've brought back the percentages on the JT Realmuto trade. You embraced some flack for it last offseason with the Giancarlo Stanton rumors, but you've brought him back, and you've got the Braves as the front runner. What makes you believe the Braves are the leaders so far in that JT Realmuto pursuit?
Well, guys, thanks for having me, first of all. It's good to talk to you. Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing up last year, too. Unfortunately, we went right down to the wire with Stanton, and he ended up signing with the Yankees. So that kind of burned me there, as a lot of people know, in the end. But that's okay. It's part of the business, and sometimes the process is more important than the end result, and I think that was it. I mean, the Braves have the necessary pieces to get this done. They have the deepest farm system in baseball. They have what the Marlins are looking for. And from what I'm told, they have a very good offer on the table, and this dates back to even July of last year, where the Braves, at the 11th hour, tried to get Realmuto at the trade deadline. So they're going to be aggressive with this. I wouldn't read into really anything that anybody says, in terms of not necessarily refuting it, but just kind of following the chain as to how this goes, because no one's going to admit they're talking to anybody or they're interested in anybody or they're not. It's just a matter of having sources in the industry that I've had through the years, and this is what I'm told. So the only stopping block with this would be the Marlins' reluctance to trade him within the division. I'm not sure if, how much that will be a factor, but I'm told it is somewhat. So we'll just have to see how this plays out, and I'm guessing we'll have some clarity in the next month.
So have you heard any prospect names get thrown around in terms of Atlanta or any club, or is it a little too early for that?
I think it's too early. The only one that I had heard was Ian Anderson a couple times, and I can't confirm that or not. I just had heard his name involved in the conversation. So, but it's just too speculative at this point. What I do know is what I reported, which is I do think that this ends up being a 2-for-1 deal, where the Marlins get a frontline pitcher along with a position player of some kind. And so I do believe that that's the way that this will play out. But again, things can change, and it could be a 3-for-1. I just don't see it being a 1-for-1. I've asked that question several times, and I didn't get back the response that I was looking for. And if it is a 1-for-1, then my guess is the only name that we'd be talking about would be like Kyle Tucker, potentially, or Forrest Whitley. And I don't think the Astros are going to give up either of those two.
Now, Craig, just to clarify, does the fact that both teams, the Atlanta Braves and the Miami Marlins, does the fact that both teams are in the same division, does that inhibit a potential deal, or are the Marlins just simply looking to maximize their return?
I think the Marlins are hesitant to trade him into the division because there would be some fear that he would extend a contract within the division, and then Miami would be having to look at him play against them, 15, 20 times a year. So, yeah, I do think that that's a factor in this. But in the end, I think the Marlins have to get the best deal possible, and they can't worry about it. It's just right now the two timelines of the player in terms of JT and the Marlins win window just doesn't match up. I mean, Realmuto's in his prime, and he probably has 4 or 5, great years ahead of him. And the Marlins, you could make the case that we're not sure if they have a good year ahead of them next year or even the year after that. We're just not sure. So he wants to win. The Marlins need to do very well on this trade because the other trades the jury is still out on them for sure. They're going to need to cultivate and develop some of these kids they've gotten in these trades. But, certainly, at least initially, the Miami fans have given the Marlins a hard time for it because of the emergence of Yelich this season, no doubt about it. So I think that this needs to be the most important deal that they make. I think that you have to circle this one, and the franchise will be judged by this trade.
You touched on Marlins bringing in a lot of young talent recently, and late in October, recently. They just brought in Victor Mesa and Victor Mesa Jr., despite rumors that Baltimore would land them. How much of an impact will both of these players have on the Marlins organization?
I think Victor will have a significant impact probably in 2020. I don't see him being in the big leagues in 2019, although it wouldn't surprise me if he was a September call-up. I think that the transition for him playing in Cuba professionally to the U.S. will be relatively smooth, like it has been for some other players, but some minor league time will be required. I could see him being an above-average defender, someone in that park. It's going to be hard to project anyone to hit 20, 25 home runs, so maybe in the intermediate there with some speed and good defense, and he could certainly be a center fielder or a corner infielder. I think he'll be a high impact player. I can't say he'll be a 5-time All-Star or anything like that, but I think that's kind of my thought on that. And then Victor Mesa Jr. is still very young, and a lot of work is going to need to be done. They're not really projecting him to be a major league player until 2020 or 2021 at the earliest here, and he'd still be super young at that point. So really hard for me to say what he will be. But the prize was really getting Victor and understanding that it was just kind of a package deal to get both of them.
So from one young outfielder to another, Lewis Brinson had kind of a rough first cup of coffee in the major leagues. Does the organization still have full trust in him as the center fielder of the future, or are hopes a bit diminished?
I don't know if they're diminished significantly, but they are diminished a little bit. And they should be. He hasn't looked the part as a major league player. He's done everything he can at AAA, but as it comes to the big leagues, he hasn't performed. So I feel like he got a pretty good chance in April, May, and June before he got hurt. He came back in September, and then there was some cautious optimism within the first week or so with hard and putting the ball in play, and then it went right back to where he was in April again. So. I don't know if you're asking me my opinion personally or the Marlins' opinion. But the Marlins' opinion, they're still going to be very high on the player. They've invested the National League MVP in getting Brinson back, and he's one of 4 pieces and arguably 3 that have, I think, a real good chance to be major league players. So, of course, they're still going to be hoping that he can turn it around, but I don't think that they're as confident as they were when they got him. I don't think that anybody could be after watching him play. And for me, he's a very good kid. And he's done all the right things, and he said all the right things, and he's certainly somebody that I think that fans in Miami will root for. But I just don't see him ever being a great player in the big leagues. I don't see it.
So if you're the Marlins, what do you have to see out of Brinson in 2019 to say it was objectively a good year for him, considering his high status and how much they've put into him being the guy from the Yelich trade?
I have a feeling they're going to start pivoting and start talking more about the other players in the trade, Monte Harrison and Isan Diaz, and then they have a pitcher who I'm not really sure what to make of at this point. His name's Jordan Yamamoto. He's been pitching in the Arizona Fall League. I think Harrison could end up being the best player in the deal, and then that would soften the blow if Brinson doesn't work out. I think for Brinson, he's got to have a lot more patience at the plate and have better pitch recognition. He definitely, when he makes contact, he hits the ball hard, but that's few and far between. So I think that he would have to improve his on-base percentage significantly, because the part of Brinson that the Marlins really allured them to is the fact that he's an athlete. So if he's getting on base 25% of the time or 26% of the time, it does no good. I think they want him to get on base 35% of the time and steal some bases, and he's a long way away from getting there. So he's got to be more patient. He's got to take more walks. And I would think at the beginning of the season they'll have him in the 6th hole, 7th hole, or something like that. And hopefully he can learn a little bit and get on base and steal bases, because without being able to utilize that speed, it would be a major disappointment.
Now shifting into the dugout with manager Don Mattingly approaching the end of his contract with the Marlins, do you believe he's the guy that Miami wants to be their long-term guy throughout their rebuild?
I don't think so, and it's not really his fault necessarily. I think that you can't ask for more than what he's done. He basically had to manage a bunch of rookies and AAA players, basically, more or less, in his first year this year under this new regime. And I don't know that they're going to be much better guys, honestly, this year, unless something significantly changes in the offseason. They look like a team that could be worse than last year. So, the manager always seems to fall on the sword in these situations. And if the Marlins win 75 games next year, which to me is a stretch, then they would be forced, Mattingly would force his hand at that point. He could say, hey, look, we've improved by 10, 11 games. But if they win the same amount of games or less than next year, I don't see him coming back. And it's really unfortunate because I do think he's a good manager. And he's really well liked among the players too. He has some deficiencies with the pitching and the bullpen, of course. Like every other manager has some deficiencies too, but he's very likable, very well respected, and he's just been dealt a card of hands that is just not winnable. And I don't see that getting much better next year.
And with us being in the season of free agency, what type of moves could we be seeing here in the near future with the Marlins when they jump in here into the free agency?
They're going to need to get somebody with 30 home run potential at one of the corner positions, first base or third base. They could put Brian Anderson at right field, or he can play third, and then they can get a right fielder. There's a couple of players who are out there that are free agents. Mark Reynolds is a name that comes to mind. He can play first, hit 30 home runs, or hit 20, and then they deal him at the deadline. Somebody like that. Lucas Duda would be another possibility. Maybe Carlos Gonzalez, you put him in the outfield, and then you could put Brian Anderson back at third base. That could be something to explore. But they have to get some more offensive pop to challenge lineups. And you can only imagine, and it's I guess an if for some, but it's a when for me, when they trade Realmuto, assuming they get back no major league ready players, which is a distinct possibility, then you're removing another 25 home runs from that lineup too. So this could be the worst offense in all of baseball if they don't add to it. It doesn't really require a lot. They're just going to need to get some one-year mercenary type 25, 30 home run hitters and go down the same road like they did last year and flip them at the deadline for some young players. And I don't have a huge problem with that, but I just can't see them going into the season with this offense as it's constructed right now. I don't see a ton of potential there.
All right, Craig, just to wrap up, talking about uniforms, Marlins are doing a rebrand that's dropping Thursday. And you said they're making a really big effort this time around. Last time, I believe, is 2012, 2013, I think. They dropped a uniform set. Wasn't all positive reactions publicly. What can you tell us about the new color scheme and whatnot? And should we expect a better public reaction this time around?
I mean, the public always seems to react negatively to whatever the Marlins do, but the bottom line is that this ownership group has a direction and they have a goal, and they're not going to deviate from that, I don't believe, and that's really important to me, and I think to everyone else, to see that they're going to actually say what they do, because the other regime, while they did try and they did have effort, it just was misguided, and it was a constant ship out to sea that was just had no rudder, that would go to the left or the right. They didn't know where they were going. They would just keep changing the plan, keep firing managers, keep firing general managers, keep trading players. There was just no direction ever. And so whether or not this works on the field over the next couple of years isn't really a concern of mine. I know it is for some people, but I would have no issue with them losing another 100 games this year. So for me, that's not important. What is important is it does look optically like they are making a concerted effort to engage the fan base, to kind of reintroduce what this franchise is, to put their own stamp on things by moving the statue outside of Marlins Park, to change the uniforms, to go back to some teal and some colors that were really liked when the Marlins were actually good, when they were in that old stadium. And I think it's a positive, fresh step toward this. I've always said, and I continue to say pretty much with every statement that I make, that I call it fairly, positively or negatively. And I also say that I have no idea whether any of this is going to work or be good. But there does require a grade for effort, and for effort in terms of this, they get a very high grade. They're trying hard. They want to engage the fans. They want to show that things are changing. Will it work? Will this long-term plan work? Again, I don't know. But from what I see and I hear and I understand and I listen, I like the direction, and I like mostly of what everything pretty much is being done. And the judgment will really come in 3 or 4 years when this is all complete, when the stadium is done, when the branding is done, the transformation of the franchise is done, and hypothetically the team is competitive again. The issue is for most fans here, they're not patient. The issue for Marlins owner Derek Jeter, he said himself he's not patient. Fans are going to have to be patient and look at the Cubs and the Astros and the Phillies and some of these other teams who have torn it down and built it back up. And the Marlins are going to have to do that, and they're going to have to be patient for another couple of years to see this whole thing through.
Well, even if the jerseys don't help the on-field product, us baseball nerds will definitely be excited to see the reveal on Thursday. Craig Mish of Sirius XM, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Craig.
Guys, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thanks, Craig.
That was our interview with SiriusXM's Craig Mish. Great stuff there, especially the information on the Marlins souring a bit on Lewis Brinson as the centerpiece of their deal with Christian Yelich.
Yeah, it's really disappointing so far with what's occurred in Brinson's career. It's been a very, very slow start, especially being a centerpiece in the now National League MVP trade deal. There's a lot of criticism that's going to surround you if you don't perform right away. Obviously, he's still developing, but some very interesting stuff on Brinson. And I thought especially on Mattingly, talking about how he might not be the guy for the Marlins in the future, and it's not really his fault, just kind of wrong place and wrong time, really.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled for managerial news because, I mean, he's got sources, so there's something there where, maybe they're looking to go in a different direction. I don't think it'll be mid-season just because a team that enters the year with the expectation of finishing in last usually doesn't fire their manager when they end up in last. But maybe a year from now we'll revisit that topic and see what the names are out there.
Yeah, I have to keep a close eye on that. But like you said, just great stuff from Craig. Very nice guy. It was a fun interview. Hopefully we get to talk to him again in the near future. We'll see, though. It was fun to talk about the young guys, too, the Mesa brothers. Some a lot of great upcoming talent from them.
We touched just a bit on the Marlins logo that would be unveiled, and it did come out early Thursday afternoon. It's a very unique design. It's a logo that has no white in it. It's an M with the Marlin coming around. It looks a little similar to the Milwaukee Brewers logo, but very interesting color scheme that goes along with kind of what the Miami Heat have been playing around with their city jerseys.
I was thinking the same exact thing. It reminds me of like a city jersey type of thing.
It's pinkish red and a deep blue, but it's also it's a weird blue because it's like deep blue, but it's also light blue. I don't know, but I think it's cool. I think it's a nice rebrand. Uniforms will come out later today, on Friday, and we'll have to see where they go from the uniform standpoint. But with the color scheme, I think it's really cool.
I agree. It looks very cool. I feel like whenever there's some new jersey that comes out, I feel like I always think it's cool. But I sincerely think like this is like you said, a very interesting color scheme. Something new for Miami. They haven't had the best jerseys in the past.
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway. They've gone away from that awful orange. No more orange.
Yeah.
That Marlins made jersey orange.
And they had the black jerseys were solid. I mean, those were fine. So were the white. The orange, the bright orange, it's just not a good look.
All right, question that just popped into my head. Is Marlins man going to get a new jersey, or is he sticking with the classic?
I was thinking about Marlins man when we were interviewing Craig. That's an interesting question. I think he sticks with his jersey just because it's something he'll remember with, or it's something that'll always be a part of him.
It's also
Marlins history.
I mean, the bright orange is how he sticks out in the crowd.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what was the backstory again? He went to a Miami Heat game and a all white out game, and he was wearing his Marlins jersey or something, the bright orange, and they've TV guys focused in on him. I thought that's
I don't know.
what the
I don't
backstory
really care
is on
to
him.
Find out, honestly.
But definitely. Speaking of Marlins, man, there was some tension. Just to touch on for a second, that beginning of the season last year with Derek Jeter filling in as the new top guy in the Marlins organization.
That's one of the best quotes ever. Was he told Derek Jeter, "Do you know who I am?"
That is
just the audacity to say that to Derek Jeter.
Yeah, you're just you're just putting the foot down in front of an unbelievable shortstop. And, yeah, Derek Jeter, you're going to stand Derek Jeter down? Kudos to you.
So, just great stuff from Craig. And just going to transition now into kind of our final segments. Arizona Fall League wrapped up for a few clubs. And for the White Sox, one of their top prospects, Luis Robert, was just absolutely mashing this fall in his short 20-game stint in Arizona. He was hitting balls where the outfielders weren't even moving. If you saw the clip of just an absolute moonshot, and he is getting rave reviews from all the scouts out there. That I heard on a Baseball America report that a scout said if he could, come back in another life with Luis Roberts' body, he would be the happiest person in the world.
Oh, he has just been stunning to watch in the Arizona Fall League and really encouraging after sort of an injury-plagued season. He fractured his hand, I believe, or a finger or something like that. And I recall when he had the fractured hand, he hit a grand slam with a fractured hand. That just says how talented this guy really is, how much strength he has. And I remember seeing Robert's hitting coach be heard in the opponent's dugout, or what he usually hears is the players go, he's up. What's he going to do? How far is he going to hit it? That's just, when you have a whole team standing up at the dugout for such a young prospect, it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, the final numbers for him in Arizona: the slash line 324 average, 367 on base, 432 slugging. He mixed in a 14-game hitting streak in there. All in all, just really what you like to see from a guy that didn't get much out of the regular season.
Yeah, he's right there in the midst of the top 50 prospects on most rankings, and not only does he have the power, but he has incredible speed, stealing bases left and right. I just cannot wait for him to come up for the White Sox because he will be an immediate impact.
So that's a good transition there. One youngster with incredible power to another one. Shohei Ohtani took home the AL Rookie of the Year award earlier this week, beating out the name's escaping Miguel Andujar in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Despite playing a whole lot less games, but Ohtani did something that we hadn't seen in 100 years: 50 innings on the mound, and a 900 OPS at the plate. I mean, for as much hype as he got, and it did get a little over the top by March. He really did impress.
Oh, it was really impressive. Just to see him dominate on both ends of hitting and pitching. The first player since Babe Ruth with 10 pitching appearances and 20 homers in a season en route to the AL Rookie of the Year. That says something. Babe Ruth, the only other guy to do that before him.
And they were a strong 50 innings too.
Oh, he was filthy. His balls would just sink into the dirt when he would least expect it, and he would just toy with some hitters. He'd make some hitters look very foolish. Really fun to watch him play. Another guy who dealt with injury. A lot of people there was a handful of people that were sort of surprised with the outcome. A lot of people were believing that Andujar had a great shot at winning it. I think this was one of the more kind of up for debate rookie awards amongst all of them. It was kind of close. I think Andujar had a great season. I know he struggled defensively, but really just exciting stuff. It's going to be. He's so young too, Shohei Ohtani. He'll go a long way.
So Ohtani takes it in the AL. The National League winner was Ronald Acuna in Atlanta. Over in the Cy Young discussion, Blake Snell beat out Justin Verlander, Corey Kluber, and Chris Sale for his first Cy Young in what nobody saw coming at the beginning of the year, at least. I mean, not that we didn't see him as a great number one, but Cy Young award in a year after he struggled in 2017 was pretty awesome to see.
It really was. I recall actually a story between the both of us being pretty invested in fantasy baseball. I remember when Blake Snell got called up, I got the MLB alert on my phone, and we were both in radio class at the time, and I told you about the news, and you're like, oh, I'm going to pick him up in fantasy. And I had already beaten you to it, beat you 5 minutes before. I told you that I already picked him up. And you're like, do you even know who he is? I'm like, I'm about to find out, and now he's a Cy Young winner.
Well, I managed to keep him as one of my keepers for 2016 and 2017. The league has fizzled out, but
it has.
I'll take credit for myself for having that one on the fantasy radar, even if I didn't land him during the debut.
I will give the credit to you because I picked him up early. He wasn't impressive right off the bat, but he's come a long way.
Yeah, but you got to stick with those guys. Pitchers are so fragile that it can be such a quick adjustment, and all of a sudden you start dominating. And we saw that with Aaron Nola in the National League Cy Young Award race, where he was good when he started, but he wasn't great. And pitchers they take some time, and that's something that's different about baseball than a lot of sports. You look at basketball and football, and first-round picks just shoot right into the starting lineups and the best players, but it just doesn't happen in baseball. You got to give them their time.
Yeah, the development process is much longer than other sports, NFL, NBA, NHL. I guess is a little similar to the MLB. But still, there's a lot more levels, I think, to surpass.
It's a little weirder, too. They play
baseball.
in college while they're drafted, which I don't really understand.
Yeah, it is pretty confusing, but just a totally different process.
Yeah, good
when
thing
making it
our
to the
podcast
bigs.
isn't on hockey because I would be lost. But, yeah, for Cy Young, on the National League side, it was Jacob deGrom who deserved it. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, he even deserved some votes for MVP with how incredible he was. But he takes home the Cy Young, and for the MVPs.
Speaking of the, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but how about that comment from Michael Wilbon about Jacob deGrom not deserving to win the Cy Young?
I just saw it.
This was a little earlier in the year.
No, he did you hear him back it up within the last hour?
I did not.
Yeah, he was just on pardon the interruption a couple hours ago saying that baseball nerds are ruining the league and old year pitchers used to win with bad run support too, which is just like imagine that being the hill that you're gonna die on. The pitcher win stat being good.
Yeah, he was all over the win category. He's like he was just saying it would have been like a disgrace basically if deGrom would win it with the amount of wins he has. I'm like, do you see the team that he's on? What run support does this guy get from his offense? None.
I don't know why that guy has a platform to ever talk about baseball, but
yeah, he's got to stick to other sports. Baseball is just not for him.
So, and then the MVPs, just getting to that quickly, came out tonight. Pretty easy calls. Christian Yelich in the National League takes home his first. Mookie Betts also brings home his first in the American League for the Red Sox. Two really deserving awards there. Not much of a race in either one either.
Yeah, not really. People talked about Baez a little early on, but Yelich just ran away at the end of the season. He just really lit it up. I mean, how about that trade for the Brewers and how it's shaped out to be for them?
I mean, it looks great.
For the Brewers.
They gave up some. Obviously, they gave up some talent, minor league talent, but nothing that broke their bank. It didn't set them back in terms of future at all. It looks like it shot him forward based on how well he played, and then not to overlook. Lorenzo Cain in that outfield too. They also landed on a deal that nobody else wanted to sign him.
Yeah, they were a very fun team to watch. A lot of people had the Cubs locked up in the NL Central, but the Brewers were a dark horse, and they made it all the way to the NLCS, lost in Game 7. So that's really how far they can go. And I think they're only going to get better. But just a good job for Yelich, and fantastic season, like you said, both very deserving of this award.
So with the baseball awards now in, that's going to wrap it up for our first podcast of the Baseball Never Sleeps podcast. Make sure to join us Monday morning when we have a interview with Paul Hoynes, the Cleveland Indians beat reporter for Cleveland.com. We're going to be talking some Michael Brantley news, the Indians' surprising teardown, what's going on in Cleveland and the AL Central in general. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.